Daf Yomi, Tractate Bava Metzia, page 27. A. Top of the page. In the case of one who purchases produce from a merchant who acquired the produce from several suppliers and is unable to determine the source of the coins, but in the case of one who purchases produce from a single owner, he is obligated to return the coins to the seller. And likewise, the Tana who recited Mishnayot and Braitot in the study hall of Rav Nachman taught a Braita before Rav Nachman. The sages taught that the coins belong to the buyer only in the case of one who purchases produce from a merchant, but in the case of one who purchases produce from a single owner, he is obligated to return the coins to the seller. Rav Nachman said to the Tana, "But what does the owner thresh the grain himself? But does the owner thresh the grain himself? His workers thresh the grain, and the coins could belong to one of them." The Tana said to Rav Nachman, based on the difficulty you raise, "Should I delete it from the collection of authoritative Braitot?" Rav Nachman said to the Tana, "No. Interpret the Braita as referring to a case where the grain was threshed by his Canaanite slave or maidservant, and therefore any coins found intermingled with the produce belong to the owner." New Mishnah. This Mishnah is an excerpt from a halachic midrash concerning lost items, based on the verse, "You shall not see your brother's ox or his sheep wandering and disregard them. You shall return them to your brother. And so you should do with his donkey, and you shall do with his garment, and so you shall do with every lost item of your brother, which shall be lost from him. And you have found it, you may not disregard it." Deuteronomy 22, 1-3. The garment was also included in the generalization that one must return all of these items. And why did it emerge from the generalization that it should be specified? To draw an analogy to it and to say to you, what is notable about a garment? It is notable in that there are distinguishing marks concerning it, and it has claimants asserting ownership, and its finder is obligated to proclaim his find. So too, with regard to any item concerning which there are distinguishing marks, and it has claimants asserting ownership, its finder is obligated to proclaim his find. Gemara, the Talmud says, when the Mishnah says that the garment was included in the generalization that one must return all of these items, in what generalization is included? Bava said, it is included in the generalization, "And so shall you do with his donkey, and so shall you do with his garment, and so shall you do with every lost item of your brother, which shall be lost from him, and you have found it, you may not disregard it." Deuteronomy 22, verse 3. Rava says, why do I need all the specific items that the Merciful One writes that one must return? An ox, a donkey, a sheep, and a garment. One of them would seem to suffice. Rava answers, they are all necessary, as a unique halacha is derived from each example. As if the Merciful One had written only garment, I would say this matter, meaning the mitzvah to return the lost item, applies only in a case where the owner brings witnesses capable of testifying about the item itself, or he describes distinguishing marks concerning the item itself. But with regard to returning a donkey to its owner, in a case where he brings witnesses with regard to the saddle or describes distinguishing marks concerning the saddle and not on the donkey, say that we do not return the donkey to the owner. To counter this, the Merciful One writes donkey from which it is derived that a donkey is returned to its owner even in a case where he describes distinguishing marks on the saddle. Rava continues, with regard to the specific mention of ox and sheep that the merciful one writes, why do I need them? Rava answers, from ox it is derived that one must return even the shared wool of its tail, and from sheep it is derived that one must return even its shared wool. The Gemara challenges, and let the merciful one write only ox, from which it is derived that one must return even the shared wool of its tail, and derive all the more so that one must return the more substantial shared wool of a sheep. Rather, Rava said the term donkey stated with regard to damage in the category of pit, according to the opinion of Rabbi Yehuda, see Exodus 21:33 and Bava 54a. And the term sheep stated with regard to a lost item, according to the opinion of everyone, are difficult. There is no explanation for why they are stated. The Gemara suggests and say that the term sheep comes to teach the obligation to return the animal's dung. The Gemara answers, one need not return dung because the owner has renounced its ownership. The Gemara suggests that perhaps the term sheep comes to include the obligation to return an item based on its owner providing distinguishing marks. As we raised the dilemma, is the halacha that an item can be identified using distinguishing marks by Torah law, or is it by rabbinic law? Therefore, the merciful one writes sheep in order to teach that it is not only through the testimony of witnesses, but even based on distinguishing marks that we return lost items to their owner. Resolve the dilemma and conclude that the halacha that an item can be identified using distinguishing marks is by Torah law. The Gemara rejects this proof. The sages say one can understand the matter from the fact that the Tana teaches the concept of distinguishing marks together with the term garment. As is taught in the Mishnah, what is notable about a garment? It is notable in that there are distinguishing marks concerning it, and it has claimants concerning ownership, and its finder is obligated to proclaim its find. So too with regard to any item concerning which there are distinguishing marks, and it has claimants asserting ownership, its finder is obligated to proclaim its find. Conclude from it that the term sheep does not come to teach the obligation to return an item based on its owner providing distinguishing marks. Tana Rabbanan, the sages taught in Braita, the verse states, so shall you do with his donkey, and so shall you do with his garment, and so shall you do with every lost item of your brother, which shall be lost for him, and you have found it. Deuteronomy 22, verse 3. The rabbis derive that this phrase serves to exclude a lost item in which there is not the value of one pruta, which, due to its negligible value, is not considered lost. Yehuda says that this halacha is derived from the conclusion of that verse, which shall be lost from him, and you have found it. The term "and you have found it" serves to exclude a lost item in which there is not the value of one pruta. I think we'll stop here and continue with part 2.